It was like gold dust when he emailed me back with all them answers. I was just like, wow, you've just cemented this for me, basically.
Gaming development has taken off in the last 20 years, feeding an ever-growing market that seems to never stop gaining momentum. With this increase in product has come an increase in scrutiny as these companies struggle to keep up with the daunting task of feeding their insatiable audience. Some of these escape unscathed, with glowing records and fantastic games, while others, well, they can't escape the grip of controversy. The video game industry and scandal kind of go hand in hand. Remember the hot coffee mod in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas? How about the more recent $10 million settlement by Riot Games over gender discrimination in 2019? 2020 saw its own major scandal in the industry, with Ubisoft reeling from multiple allegations ranging from sexual misconduct to assault. This is Kirk McKeand. He's the editor-in-chief at TheGamer, and well, he got to looking into the goings-on over at one of the industry's rising stars last year after noticing an above-average amount of employees leaving the company.
Seeing how many people have left the place set off alarm bells for sure. I mean, you do see turnover in other places, but there was a big mix here. Rather than like a lot of low-level staff leaving for better jobs, there was quite a lot of senior people leaving as well, which isn't really that normal. You do see it happen, but not at the volume that is happening here. Yeah, it just didn't seem normal to me.
In Poland, there are two giants of the industry with their own controversies, albeit with more room for improvement than others: CD Projekt and Techland.
In Poland, if you want to work for a AAA games company, you've basically got two options, which is Techland and CD Projekt Red.
Both formed in the early 90s, and both saw rapid growth in the last few years, specifically with the release of CD Projekt Red's The Witcher in 2007 and Techland's Dead Island in 2011.
I think the pandemic's helped the Polish games industry a bit as well, because teams are becoming more distributed now, and people are more open to having remote workers, so their options are wider.
If you haven't been living under a rock, you know all about CD Projekt Red's release snafu with their long-anticipated Cyberpunk 2077. Techland, meanwhile, hasn't seen quite the same level of press despite having their own delayed title, Dying Light 2, itself a sequel to what many consider their crowning achievement thus far. This is Paweł Marchewka. He's the founder and CEO of Techland. He's also the 8th richest man in Poland, a literal billionaire whose fortune has been built on the rapid rise of the video game industry. After years of hard work, he's made something special out of Techland, and unfortunately, with massive success comes hubris.
Basically, Paweł made his money selling like CDs. He basically sold games. He was like a retailer, and from the money he made from that, created a game studio. And now is a self-made billionaire. And there's a level of self-belief that comes with that as well. If you've kind of pulled yourself up from basically nothing to that status, it's hard to let other people take the reins.
Nowadays, Techland is definitely most well known for Dying Light, but it was a little creative marketing for a mildly well-received zombie shoot-'em-up that started their rise to glory.
They weren't really on the radar at all until the first Dead Island, which wasn't a very good game actually, but the trailer for that game put them on the map. I don't know if you remember it, but it was like a CGI trailer played backwards, and it was nothing to do with the game really.
From homophobic slurs to seriously questionable internal processes, the story of Techland isn't quite as overtly scandalous as the Ubisoft scandal, nor is it as fun to poke at as CD Projekt Red's recent blunders. Instead, it comes off as the kind of story that could easily take place within the confines of any major video game developer. Techland first got into hot water with the sexual misconduct and harassment allegations against Dying Light 2 storywriter Chris Avellone in June 2020. While this was of course a shakeup for the game, Techland's quick handling of the situation meant that they were saved from any serious negative press. In February of 2021, however, Kirk published his article, and it showed that while distancing themselves from Avellone was certainly a good PR move, there was plenty for the company itself to contend with that couldn't be dealt with via a little social media announcement and parting of ways with a single writer. As it turns out, Techland was dealing with complete internal rot. And as the saying goes, the fish rots from the head. While the movie and TV industry has become synonymous with misconduct allegations and other horror stories, it is only fairly recently that such a dark underbelly has shown itself in the gaming industry. In this case, all of the details seem to have been corroborated by the source.
One person that I contacted, I don't know who it was, but they actually got in touch with the CEO, and that caused him to email me and tell me that he knew I'd been asking about him, which is how I actually ended up getting in touch with Paweł himself. I was planning on reaching out to him towards the end of the process anyway, but he kind of came to me first.
Paweł never dismissed the claims, nor does the company's official statement on the matter try to right the ship in any serious manner.
I mean, he was quite open. He answered the questions, and I'm sure he feels that he's being fair. Yeah, he was open and honest. I mean, most of the things that he said backed up the points in the article, to be honest, and basically confirmed them all.
So, as to the issues brought up in Kirk's article, he begins by describing management giving feedback to an artist's work, which they dub the pejorative pedalski, which translates to a homophobic slur. Elsewhere, during a meeting to discuss the modern Dark Ages within Dying Light 2, a lead made the comment, "At least they knew how to deal with women back then."
The thing that bothered me the most was like the bigotry, the casual homophobia. There's no world in where that's acceptable to any worker, never mind industry professionals of decades long, and you're telling them that the character is bad because it looks gay. It's like that's the sort of thing you'd hear in junior school, not in a professional workplace in the games industry.
In Paweł Marchewka's office hangs a print of David Yarrow's photograph Trust, which features a cheetah bonding with a nude woman, something that by itself feels perhaps a bit inappropriate to be on display in the workplace, but combined with these other infractions seems to tie together a work culture disinterested in its employees' boundaries and comfort. However, as the article continues, these issues give way to more deeply entrenched problems. For one, Marchewka's wife is the head of the HR department, something most insiders looking in would find questionable at the very least.
Yeah, well, his wife actually didn't work for the company before they were together, but then when they first got together, she was hired to oversee the construction of the company's new offices. And then somewhere further down the line, she became head of HR. Now, from looking at her public work experience and from people I've spoken to, she had no previous HR experience whatsoever. But the CEO doesn't see this as a conflict of interest. Whereas personally, if I were to have a problem with my boss and my boss's wife was the head of HR, I would not feel comfortable going to the head of HR in case there's any pillow talk.
At brainstorming sessions, word has gotten out about some truly horrific ideas.
Their brainstorming sessions for marketing have ideas like dropping off a bunch of body bags at the Mexican border and sending out medical test kits to test people for this fictional pathogen. But the test kits were real, so you could find out you had cancer or something while you're testing yourself. But these ideas were just brainstormed. They never actually came to be. I know you want to create an environment where people are free to be creative and say stuff, even if it's a bit of a silly idea. But I think those ideas go beyond the realms of silly ideas and into kind of problematic territory where they shouldn't even be raised anyway, really.
Of course, some ideas like this unfortunate limited edition release of Dead Island Riptide did manage to make it out of brainstorming, marking an early warning sign about the goings-on in Techland.
Kind of grim, to be honest.
Then there's creative director of marketing, Łukasz Janusz, one of the newest members of the management team, whose work seems to be dictated by the wrong stimuli.
I think he's a man who's trying to do the best job he can, but he doesn't have the necessary skills or experience to lead a team marketing a global product in the games industry. His previous job was at Kinguin, which is like a G2A style key reseller. It's not a AAA game studio, it's totally different kettle of fish. And you can see the decline in quality on the graphics and stuff. After the interview went out, after the piece went out, Techland put up a tweet saying March 5th is Employee Appreciation Day, so we took the opportunity to ask our leads, managers and directors to tell us what they appreciate about their teams every day. So they've got this collage of all the leads holding up signs saying what they appreciate about their teams. And Lucas Llanos is there holding up a sign that says engagement. Now, if that's the metric that you measure for appreciating your teams, I don't know if that says you appreciate your teams. You're just appreciating what they produce, which is engagement. The other people holding up signs, some of it reads like coded stuff now after the articles come out. You know, one of them's trust, like trust, don't talk to journalists. Perseverance, which is, you know, keep working hard. Common sense and sense of humor, you know, there's these off-color jokes. They're basically saying you should be able to take them. And some of these signs, they're photoshopped, which is very strange. Like some of them are handwritten, then some of them are just blank pieces of paper with words photoshopped onto them. It's like, did they change the words on there? It can send you down a bit of a rabbit hole, but like in the light of the article, that collage comes across in a totally different way to me.
This brings us to Dying Light 2. Originally, the game was slated for a spring 2020 release. But unsurprisingly, this was an unrealistic goal put forth by Marchewka, despite his employees knowing full well how impossible it would be. This may relate somewhat to his blind devotion to the idea of design through iteration, which among other things, seems to fuel his belief in a less traditional developmental pipeline, which caused a falling out with now former Chief Development Officer Paweł Marchewka, who was with the company for 19 years before calling it quits over, as one of Kirk's sources puts it, a production pipeline that changes so quickly and rapidly that it might as well not exist. Rather than utilize an industry standard engine like Unreal or Unity to test changes for the games, they are instead placed in Chrome Engine 6, the company's own proprietary engine. As one source puts it, it slowed everyone down and that frustrated everyone. They go on to explain, the tech isn't up to speed. In short, management wasn't listening to the experts. What makes that design through iteration mindset even more strange is Marchewka's love of CD Projekt Red and other major AAA gaming studios, which he's quick to quote and mine for ideas as to how his company should run, which seems counterintuitive to the innovation he's so enraptured by. He demands references to games he knows and squashes new ideas he doesn't like without offering much in the way of positive or critical feedback. This has led to what one source calls a creativity-killing vibe. Management also has a massive hand in guiding the projects while dismissing the hard work and knowledge of the developers, with only the programming department seeming to escape unscathed thanks to their more impenetrable skill set. Marchewka and creative director Adrian Chichewski have reportedly created an unstable environment in which the production of Dying Light 2 is always in flux, with constantly changing story and mechanics driving the team to exhaustion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the full picture, but essentially nothing gets approved unless the CEO or PISA say so. And that affects every department other than programming, because programmers can just throw up a line of code and say, how would you fix this? And they won't have an idea.
Add unrealistic deadlines and what's increasingly looking like a hostile work environment, and it's no wonder that Techland is bleeding staff and falling behind on its own goalposts. But it's not Paweł Marchewka's fault that things are going wrong within his own company. To quote another source, when things go wrong, he's always looking for someone to blame. It's never his fault. How can it be his fault when he's a self-made billionaire? So with all of that said, and more to read in the article, is Techland an isolated case? Kirk doesn't think so.
I personally don't think it's isolated at all. We've seen stories about crunch and stuff recently, and Ubisoft has its sexual harassment allegations, which led to mass exodus of like a lot of lead developers there. I think there's a lot more going to come out. More stories will happen. Jason Schreier's been doing some amazing work there, highlighting a lot of it. But there are probably more CEOs with sexy leopards in their closets.
As Kirk explains, this is far from a problem without a solution.
I guess what the problem is in the games industry is that these studios are massive, right? There's hundreds of people working on them. If you're just looking at percentages, you're going to have a percentage of dickheads in every company, right? If it's 1%, you're going to still have a good handful of assholes. But it's just whether the leads cultivate that or nip it in the bud. That's the difference.
Based on Kirk's article and what he told me in this interview, to fix this is simply a matter of self-reflection and moving on from past blunders and accepting that the core of the company, the secret ingredient, is the team members who, sadly, seem to be tossed to the wayside time and time again in favor of flashy marketing ploys and external stimuli that do little more than hinder the creative process. The fish rots from the head. For Techland, the head is of course CEO Paweł Marchewka. But that rot can be reversed. His hostility toward new ideas and the environment he's shepherded are curable. While the current state of the company seems to be taking its toll on both employees and the overall product, it's obvious that the creative drive and passion is there. It's just up to the powers that be to learn from past mistakes and capitalize before it's too late.